Hello, everyone. Dr. Lisa Faast here from Diversify RX, and I am with a new friend of mine, Dr. Devin Bustin from It, and we are going to be talking about pharmacist-prescribed contraception. For those of you that have known me for a while, know that I love advocating for pharmacists to work at the top of their license. Not only is it good for you as a individual pharmacist, but in our world where I'm helping pharmacy owners diversify and grow their profitable revenue, I think it's absolutely critical for independent pharmacies to have their pharmacists working at the top of their license and providing more clinical services to their communities and really inserting ourselves into the health and wellness of our patients and our entire community there. So was introduced to Devin from a couple of actually mutual friends, almost like simultaneously. I had a couple people hook us up together, and he is doing some really cool things with some studies in order to get, pharmacists to go down the path of prescribing contraception. So Devin, welcome. Thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and introduce you to our audience. We got audiences on LinkedIn, we got audiences on Facebook, but let's introduce you and your company It, which I love the name, by the way. Like,
thank you.
Always got to recognize good marketing. So just go ahead and give yourself like an introduction of like what your mission is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. First, I'd like to thank you for, allowing me to enter your platform, and I really appreciate it. I think this is a very important topic, so thank you so much. My name is Devin Bustin. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at It. It is a essentially software company and a direct-to-consumer contraceptive services company. And it was kind of created out of necessity. My wife had some issues with contraceptive access as well as side effects. Not going to go into too much details and air that here, but it led to us realizing that the market really was missing something. And what it was missing was affordable, quality contraceptive services. There was kind of quality contraceptive services in the traditional sense that were hard to access. And then there was telehealth that was not quite best standard medicine practice. And so what we wanted to do was use technology to be able to kind of create both in one place. And this journey has kind of led us to this point because in order to achieve that, we had to create our own electronic health record to essentially make efficiencies so that we could decrease our overhead so that we could pass that on to the consumer. And that was our business model because we did not want it to be expensive because that would defeat the whole access purpose. And so we were able to apply for an NIH grant. The NIH recognizes that pharmacists are a huge part of the healthcare team. And I think it's really commendable that they are just so aware of that. And they also realize that, pharmacist-prescribed contraceptive services, they work. There's plenty of data to suggest that they work great, that pharmacists are more than capable of providing quality care, and that it really solves a giant access issue that creates a lot of inequities in our healthcare system. And so they recognize that and they put out an RFP grant, and using our technology, we were able to win that grant. And so now we're at the stage of studying our technology in this use case to try to see if it can help solve the problems of implementing these services.
Yeah, and that grant was really what kind of brought us together because you were looking for some pharmacists to participate. And certainly I know lots of forward-thinking pharmacists and pharmacy owners that could probably feed into that. Before we dive into the study, though, I know when it comes to pharmacists prescribed anything, whether it be contraception or anything else, there is just a ton of confusion. And part of that is because we have 50 states and 2 territories with completely different scopes of practice for pharmacists. And so when I put out the call first of like, hey, there's this study, do you want to participate? The number one question I got was, well, can I participate? So many people don't even know like what their states allow, what their states don't allow. What do you see on that landscape in terms of specifically for pharmacists prescribed anything? And in particular, of course, contraception.
Understood. Yeah, it's very challenging. I mean, each board of pharmacy in each state has different set of rules, and it's all state dependent, and therefore there's no general kind of federal consensus. And that makes it really challenging. And you kind of have to stay on top of the legislation in your state. And that's tough. I mean, we're all busy. It's hard to kind of keep up with it all. I think we're definitely headed towards increasing the scope in most states for pharmacists, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do. When it comes to pharmacist-prescribed contraceptives, there's about 17 states plus the District of Columbia right now that do allow pharmacists to independently prescribe contraceptives. But as we've kind of experienced through the COVID pandemic and in other kind of areas in pharmacy services, collaborative practice agreements are another way to do that as well, even if the state does not allow it to be independent. So there are ways to do it in every state. It's just easier in some states to practice independently.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. There are some states that are really forward thinking in that. I know Idaho was one that I was, became aware of, probably maybe one of the first. I don't know, it might have been the first. But as you said, there's 17 states. So kind of getting back to your study, who can participate in your study? Is it only those pharmacists that are in those 17 states, or is it pharmacists in any state or District Columbia or territory? Let's talk about the qualification, because that was the number one. Was like, hey,
Perfect.
can I participate? A lot of people want to.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm overwhelmed by the pharmacy community and like the willingness to participate and the forward-thinking nature. I mean, I think it's incredibly refreshing coming from the MD side of it, where it's a little bit slower to evolve sometimes. So first off, shout out to the whole pharmacy community there. Anyone can participate who's a licensed pharmacist in the United States of America. And the reason that we stopped at the US is that this is an NIH-funded study. And so we're looking at the US right now. Of course, it doesn't mean that the problem is unique to the US. I've been speaking with some Canadian pharmacists who say, hey, we also have this problem. Do you want to work with us? And I said, absolutely, I would love to. But right now we got to focus on this NIH grant. So hopefully in the future, but we want a diverse group of pharmacists. I mean, the ultimate goal of any study is to be able to extrapolate to a population, right? And so we want a group of pharmacists that represents the United States as a whole in terms of the pharmacists that are out there. And so, you don't have to be in a state that is allowing this, independent practice prescribing contraceptives. And of course, I want some people in those states, but in reality, I kind of want more people that are not in those states. The goal is to see if a pharmacist, for the most part, who has not done this before, feels more comfortable using our platform or the standard of care that currently exists, paper charting method. And we're trying to run that study as objectively as possible. And so we do want diversity of all sorts, right? We want people that work at large retail pharmacies. We want people that work at independent pharmacies, health-based systems. We want someone who's been practicing for 1 year and someone who's been practicing for 30 years. We want someone who's, 28 and someone who's 65, right? We want to be able to span kind of all the population that exists in pharmacists in the US. So anyone can participate that's actively licensed in the US and has experience with clinical pharmacy.
Awesome. So, that was a good, kind of demographic type of analysis. Now, on the flip side of this, on the outside of the study, tell us a little bit about what is going to be required for the pharmacist to participate. How many hours? Obviously they should have an inclination towards clinical. They shouldn't be against contraception. There should probably be some other qualifiers in there, but what does participating in the study look like? We're all short on time. We all have to, make priorities. So what does that look like?
Of course. Yeah. So definitely recognize, we're asking essentially for a favor here, right? We're asking someone to donate their time, and we take that seriously. I'm busy, everyone's busy, and it's tough to kind of add another responsibility in there. And so what we're trying to do here is make it as convenient as humanly possible. So it's all remote. The signing up for the study is very quick. It's, signing a consent form and answering a survey. After that, we give access to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy Contraceptive Continuing Education course, which meets the requirements for most states to prescribe contraceptives. And, shout out to Oregon. They essentially invented pharmacist-prescribed contraceptives, and most of the other states that, do it now followed their lead there. So shout out to the forward thinkers at the Oregon Board of Pharmacy. But so we used their course that they created at Oregon State University. And it's a 4 credit hour course. We pay for it through the NIH grant. And, the continuing education credits can be used towards licensure, but also towards, practicing in this manner. So that's the biggest part of it. It's 4 credit hours. I don't think it's going to really take 4 hours. It's done at your leisure. It's a web-based, non-live course. So you kind of fit that in when you can. And then once that's complete, we schedule one 90-minute Zoom call. And that Zoom call will have 2 standardized patient encounters with a third-party moderator who will act as the patient. And after each encounter, there'll be some surveys. And that's it. Once that call is done, the participation is over for this part of the study. Ideally, we would love a couple of the pharmacists who are very passionate to join us in a focus group at a later date, because they'll have, good experience using both our platform and the standard of care. So we want to hear what they have to say in a focus group format. But that's completely optional.
Great. And I know a lot of, at least on the pharmacy owner side, and certainly probably on pharmacists that are kind of independent doing their own consulting. I know the question I get a lot is, how do I get paid for these services? And, that particular angle isn't a part of your study, but there are some other really cool companies out there that are coming up and trying to work very hard to get pharmacists to be paid for these services, whether it's through the medical side, but you can always charge cash. I know so many times we kind of dismiss, I will say, the cash paying, but patients want convenience and they want high quality. And if that means paying somebody for a cash visit, I mean, how many times do we go to chiropractors or massage therapists or other things for things that we want? And so, you mentioned your wife having some issues. I know, we've all had our own personal issues. And I, as a mom, I've paid cash for services because they fit my needs better at that time than trying to go through the traditional, health system. So, if this is something that you as a pharmacist have been interested in, like I said, you're going to get the paid for CE course from the Oregon State Board of Pharmacy, which is awesome. And you're going to get kind of some experience, like, they're going to be kind of mock patient encounters, but you're going to get some experience in what that looks like. And then maybe you'll be able to start this on your own. Like, if you're in one of those states that allows it on your own, or maybe then you go out and get a collaborative practice, but this could be kind of that kickoff point where they go out and start this on their own.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Obviously, you need to be paid for this. There's no question, right? It's not something that anyone would expect a pharmacist to adopt for free. And I think that's a huge part of this. And that's part of the focus group, quite frankly. We're trying to create, we're testing our technology to see if it's feasible, but we're also trying to create a comprehensive implementation package that reduces all of the barriers. And one of the biggest ones, of course, is reimbursement. I think your point on cash pay is well taken. It's perfect, right? If it's priced appropriately, it will be less than a copay to see a doctor, right? They're still going to pay the copay using insurance. So why even involve that? The overhead of using private insurers is insane.
Yeah.
They're going to deny the claim, especially for pharmacists. It's going to be back and forth. So I think the cash way is the way to get it out the gate quickly. And I think, honestly, it will work just fine. I do think from a societal standpoint, we're going to also try to figure out the Medicaid piece, because I think that's just a huge part of the access equation.
Yes.
And I think it's the right thing to do. And, being that it's just one payer, it's not going to be overly complicated administratively and also technologically. But the regulation around that, of course, is very complicated. And so in the focus group, we're going to be involving some Medicaid specialists that are pharmacists that deal with reimbursement. So we're going to definitely be kind of lasered in on that as well.
Yeah, I think the Medicaid angle is a very important one, because like you said, you're instead of dealing with 50 different insurances in a state, you're primarily dealing with one. Some Medicaid states actually already have some built in for some pharmacist reimbursement for some clinical services. So it's not going to be completely out of the question in order to go forward on that. So what are your hopes at this study? Like, how many people are you hoping to get? When do you hope that they'll be able to complete it by? What does a good goal end look like for this NIH sponsored study?
Yeah. So, we need 20 pharmacists to complete the study. that's what we kind of got approved for the grant. It's a small study, but it's a feasibility study, kind of like a pilot, so to speak. So that's enough for this study specifically. And of course, we'd like to have, I hate to say it like this, but like some backups, because things happen, right?
Yep.
And people may drop out, and that's okay, right? I mean, it's part of life. So we definitely want to be able to kind of have like some backups there to fill the spots as needed. But so if I could get like 25 pharmacists signed up, that would be incredibly ideal. And then, the study, it's over a 6-week period, but again, it's at your leisure. So, the third party moderator that we hired, she's going to work around each individual person's schedule to fit in this Zoom call. And those CME courses or CE courses, they're done at your leisure. So it's over a 6-week course, but it's about 6 hours or less of total kind of time needed to be spent on it. And like I said, we're trying to make it as easy as possible because we understand it's quite a big ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do they sign up? We've actually just got a comment from Taya over there. Hello. How do people sign up? Do they just email you? Is there another link? What is that?
Yeah. And honestly, just contact me anyway on LinkedIn. I'll accept for sure. And message me there. You can email me at devinbustin@overyit.com. And you can see how it's spelled OVARYIT.com.
Yeah, I just posted it in the comments. So devinbustin@overyit.com.
Yes, and I will respond. And, usually I like to schedule a phone call to kind of discuss. I mean, I think this is actually very helpful because, anyone who emails me from this will have a better background than the average person I'm talking to on the phone. But I do think it's good to have that phone call because there's going to be questions and I want to make sure I address everything.
Absolutely. And so this is just exciting. I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for just pharmacists as a whole. And then, of course, I want as many independent pharmacies in there, but I understand you need diversity. But I want to make sure that independent pharmacies are represented in there because I really think that this kind of care is the care that independent pharmacies are ultimately going to be the ones providing to the communities. I mean, there's something like 74% of independent pharmacies are in communities with, small populations, where there maybe not be health systems or may not be big chains and things like that. So I think it's really important to involve that independent pharmacy community and get us all into more clinically based services, whether it's point of care testing, PGX testing, birth control prescribing. I am all for that in any way, shape, or form. So, well, thanks for spending some time with me, Devin. I don't see like any other questions coming in, just a whole bunch of comments of I'm in. So I think you're going to have some candidates. That's good. I think you're going to have some candidates contacting you. I want to be really respectful of people's time, but I think pharmacist-prescribed birth control is just, I think it's just a win-win-win all around. I don't think anybody loses. It's such a win-win.
I don't think there's a downside to anybody, and I think it's so important, and it's going to help solve that rural America access issue. The contraceptive deserts, 19 million women in contraceptive deserts, but over 90% of people live within 5 miles of a pharmacy.
Yeah,
so, I mean, there, it's.
I mean, those statistics just give you goosebumps. I mean, it's crazy.
I actually got goosebumps saying.
Like seriously, it's absolutely crazy. And even in the urban areas, I mean, I'm in a big city, and even just trying to get my kids an appointment at a pediatrician, I literally have not done it because every time I call, it's so far out to their availability that I'm like, well, I don't know what my schedule is going to be then.
Exactly. I was speaking with a pharmacist in New York City yesterday, and she's like, we need this so bad in New York City. You wouldn't think. I mean, New York City has amazing healthcare, but it's an access problem.
Yep. Absolutely. So, all right. Thanks. Thank you, Devin. Thank you for all the work that you're doing over at Overyit. I'm really excited to follow this and see how it goes. So if you want to sign up, just email devinbustin@overyit.com, which I posted in the comments below. If you're watching this later, you'll be able to click on those comments or message him via LinkedIn. He'll respond to there too. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, Devin.
Thank you, Dr. Faast. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.